Plarium, we need to talk. Hello, everyone. Bront, CatHerder here. We're having some fun talking Raid Shadow Legends, and we are here to complain about the game. Yeah! And not really. We're here to give some constructive criticism and talk about some of the things in Raid that I think Raid really could improve. A lot of these are user experience issues. Some of these are just minor nitpicks. A few of them are game balance issues or gameplay issues. And I'm going to try to cover things that I think are either I have a unique spin on or I can provide some actual constructive criticism on for ways that they can make the experience better for players. But there's plenty of different opinions. Yours does not have to match mine. It certainly does help if you like the video, though. But check and like the video. I appreciate that sort of stuff. If you're not subscribed, I would appreciate a subscription. And honestly, I'd appreciate comments. If you've got some feedback on either my ideas or perhaps the other ideas, drop a comment down below. I'll see if I can try to get it to Plarium because they do watch these videos sometimes. They do pay attention to this stuff. I know some of the official CCs. I can certainly pass some of this feedback up to as well. And till then, hopefully you enjoy listening to some of my thoughts and love to hear your thoughts down below. So let's start talking about how we can improve Raid. Now, Raid's done a lot to improve their UI for quite a while now, and one of the things they've actually upgraded is the way the news page looks. And honestly, it's pretty nice. You go into the news pages here, and they pull them up here, and you can scroll through different news here. They've got some of the bigger general news here that's got some of the specific stuff about the champions released or patch notes or stuff like that. It's all good, but Plarium, why can't you push new updates to players? Those of us that run this on Plarium Play on PC are very often not shutting down the game regularly. I understand on a mobile game, players are going to shut the game down a lot more because they're not going to keep their phone open all the time on Raid. At least I wouldn't expect them to. But you can push things like some of these shop offers. One doesn't actually want to pop up here for me, but these shop offers are popping up all the time and they're regularly updating, and they update per day, and they update when they go live, and they give me amount of time to deal with them. This one's got 14 hours. This one popped up sometime this morning. This one's 16 hours. This one's 20 hours. This one's got 2 weeks of time. It's an Oktoberfest pack apparently. But you can have these pop up on my screen and have them update and refresh constantly, even though I leave the game on. Why can't you push news in a similar way? And to be fair, I would be less annoyed if a news story popped up here and I would have to hit OK when I pop back rather than constantly being an ad for an in-game shop item. Plus, if I have the updates on various events, I may say, ooh, look, there's a shard event coming up. Maybe I want to buy shards a day or two early. So it may actually help your bottom line by selling things a little earlier as well. So you can totally do a better job with that particular part of the UI. The other thing I think would be very helpful from a UI perspective is it would be really nice here if there was some kind of mercy counter. There's no way for us to look at our history to see who we pulled. There's no way for us to check and see when we last pulled somebody else. And there's no way for us to kind of see what our chances of our pulling a legendary at any point in time without going into some of these for details. It would be kind of nice if on any of these things where these things are public, have a little counter up here that told it. In fact, you could even have an option to hide it if people don't want it. You can make it an option in the UI somewhere, or maybe a checkbox down here, show, don't show current odds or mercy. So people that don't want to know don't have to know. But I think it would actually drive people to pull shards a little bit more, because it's one thing to pull shards and say, man, I haven't gotten a legendary in so long. It's another thing to be pulling for a shards, looking at your mercy and say, wow, I'm 207 in a mercy, which means if I buy 5 more shards from the shop, I've got a really good chance of getting that 10x legendary I'm trying to pull for. It buys into it a little bit. It might make you some money. It'll definitely get people pulling shards a little bit more, I think. And it's overall just a great quality of life improvement. And then finally, I think if we are in this section over here, everybody, their campaign's got a map. Dungeon's got a map. Faction Wars has got a map. Arena's got a map. So you got all 3 of them here. Clan Boss has a map. Heck, Clan Boss has got a 3rd section we can't even access yet. Doom Tower, Curse City, and Siege. Well, Curse City's kind of got a map, so does Siege, but really, there's no second step to get into some of these things. And I think it would be kind of nice if Doom Tower, Curse City, and Siege were kind of grouped together. It would make this user interface a little bit easier, so there's a little less scrolling side to side. And in fact, on most phones, I think you can see everything, including Doom Tower, from the default screen. I just don't have an ultra-wide monitor, so it doesn't show up like that. But put it all in a, call it, city content, because Siege is kind of a city, Curse City is kind of a city, Doom Tower could be in a city somewhere. I think the lore has it in a city somewhere. So group the content together, and there's some other advantages of doing that as well, which I'll get into later, but I think that'd just be kind of a nice, cleaner UI change. I think Raid could make better use of some of the auras that they have. And some of this comes from the fact that you've got Doom Tower auras, for example, that there's only a few champions that have them. There's maybe like 20 or 30 champions. Lady Kimmy is one of the better Doom Tower auras. You've got champions like Lana Tharl. You've got champions like Ursula the Mourner that have some Doom Tower auras. But I think you're kind of missing out on the fact that there are no Centranos Curse City auras, and there's no Siege auras, and honestly, there's no Clan Boss auras, but we can get into that a little later. But I think especially if you group up Doom Tower and Centranos and Siege, you could make all of those auras into one aura, and it'd be a city aura. So champions like Lady Kimmy could actually be very interesting in Siege mode because suddenly she's got an aura that becomes very interesting in Siege mode. Ursula the Mourner could see some use in some of those things because she's got a useful aura. It would actually open up teams for interesting compositions in Centranos without really nerfing the content much. It would give people interesting builds in Siege, which would make Siege a little more interesting. Siege has got its own issues. I've actually got a video on Siege, so if you want to check that, I'll leave a link to that up above. It would give you a little more flexibility with your roster, make champions that people might not think to use otherwise make a second look, and I think it would be overall a boon to the players as well as the play modes if the auras were a little more prevalent. To be fair, you've got Faction Wars auras that don't find a lot of use either. There's a couple of good ones out there, but most champions tend not to have Faction Wars auras because, once you finish with Faction Wars, it's not a major thing. It would help quite a bit. Doom Tower's got a similar issue, is eventually once you're done with Doom Tower, you stop caring about it a lot, other than you just run it daily. It becomes a little chore more than anything else. If you got these auras so that these Doom Towers were also good in Centranos, which is some pretty good endgame content, would also be helpful in Siege, which is a player versus player content, but really could use some additional twists to make it a little bit better than player versus player without arena auras is what it is right now. And again, I think that you're missing out a little bit by not having a clan boss aura. I think a clan boss aura could make a couple of champions a little more interesting for clan boss, and could add just a little bit of extra spice back into the clan boss, both the Demon Lord and obviously Hydra, and whatever the third one ends up being. Now, Raid's been working on some rebalances lately. They seem to not want to nerf people, and I kind of get it. They had a lot of backlash over the one time they have nerfed somebody, but I really think that they could do a better job of balance passes, and a lot of it could be simply enabling a lot of the older champions to be just a little bit better, because a lot of them have the same issue, and Iggy's a good example of this. This is a 6-turn cooldown, bookable to 5, for a 75% chance, bookable to 100, to place an irresistible burn. Walking Tomb Drang does this on a 3-turn cooldown from a 4-turn cooldown if you book him. There's no reason this needs to be a 6-turn bookable down to a 5-turn. Provoke here. This would be nice if this was a 3-turn as well. It's not even a 100% chance to do an AoE provoke. What's so wrong with having him having a couple 3-turn cooldowns? Go through a lot of the older champions, and anybody that's got a cooldown of 4 or 5 turns or more, look at those abilities and drop them a turn or two in most cases. Now, not everyone, because you've got like your Warlords who are some of the OG champions. You don't need to be dropping his turn down. You don't need to be adjusting Kaimar's particularly. There's a couple of champions that probably don't need this treatment. And, if you know the champion, you know the champion. So it's not, I don't need to go through all of them. But Lysandra maybe could use a cooldown buff. I think Sigmund's got a 4-turn cooldown ability that really should be a 3-turn cooldown ability given the way the state of the game is. There's all kinds of champions that are just this side of useful because they've been power crept so much. There are better options out there. But making some of these turns and some of these cooldowns just a little bit better would really help improve how this game is accessible to players who only have a couple of champions. So somebody pulls an Iggy. Iggy's a good champion, but he's really only a good champion because of the irresistible burn, and he's really only good in spider comps because it's got such a long cooldown. You bring these cooldowns down to a 3-turn, he's suddenly useful in Hydra, but he's still not meta in Hydra because his provoke is still only a 75%. He still has other issues that may not make him particularly great. You're going to have to book him as well. He's going to require a lot of books, but it gives you champions that people are not honestly saying, I don't need to invest in these champions, and making them worth investing in again without really making them so power crept that you're changing the meta at the top end pretty much too much of anything. Rosin is another great example of that. Rosin's got a 7-turn cooldown as AoE that books to 6. It's a good ability. It hits hard, and it does a 100% turn meter drop. It doesn't need to be on a 6-turn cooldown after booked. It could be on a 4-turn cooldown, and Rosin is still a good champion that has plenty of champions that are better than him that you don't need to take. But it would make him more viable in areas. It'd make it more interesting to fuse him, for example. And those are just a couple of examples. I could probably go through and pick 30 or 40 legendaries that could use this type of buff pretty much with a blanket pass. Now, Plarium, super raids have helped a ton. They've made Doom Tower and Faction Wars a lot easier to run. You can do better for keyed content. There is no reason why, instead of doing this multi-battle, where I have to set up all of these battles, I couldn't do multi-battle and say, use all of these keys in one run. So I could select 4 keys, or 8 keys, or 12 keys, or 16 keys. I could select whatever I wanted to as far as how many keys I wanted to use on this run. It would do the one run, and then if I won, it would use all the keys. And if I didn't win, well, then it wouldn't actually use the keys, would it? And I'd have to run it again. It would work great for Faction Wars. It would reduce the chance I have to run, because normally I'm going to run 2 of these things on Super Raids. So I got to sit through stage 20 or stage 21 or whatever stage I happen to run twice. Then I might run stage 9 to fill in some of the stuff as well. Whether or not I do that's, kind of depending on where I am in the account and how much time I have. But in Doom Tower, it becomes a huge time saver because instead of running 7 times on super raids and 1 time without to use all 15 keys, I would run 1 key and tell it to spend 15 keys, and I'm done. And hey, maybe if my team isn't 100%, it fails and I have to do it over again. Not a big deal. Feels fair to me. But you make it run once, you tell me ahead of time how many keys I want to use. It uses that many keys. If I don't want to use all my keys, well, I'm going to have to run it again later because I'm using different amounts of keys in other places. But it gives me options and it saves me a ton of time. For early game accounts where it might be 5 minutes per run, that could save somebody an hour or 2. For late game accounts where you can make an entire run in a minute or less, well, that's still 8 runs. That's still 8 to 10 minutes. That's a lot of time saving you can do. You're not losing out on anything because you're not costing energy. Now, there is one exception to that. We're going to go over to Iron Twins. And Iron Twins is the exception to this and really needs to be fixed as well. Iron Twins shouldn't cost energy and keys. Now, I understand why you want to limit Iron Twins as far as how many PMs you can run it, so just drop the energy cost and make it keys. It's still going to be 150 gems to buy another set of keys. So if someone's buying 2 sets of keys, they're also spending equivalent of 2 refills worth of energy. It's 120 energy if you're farming level 15. And if you're only farming it once, it's 1 refill. It's not a huge boost for people that are struggling to do anything, but it's that much extra energy that they can spend in the game somewhere else. Allowing them to do the key where they could run all 6 keys at once, that'd be great. If you let people buy them ahead of time, they can run all 12 keys. That's great. Or maybe if you really want to force the issue, they run their 6 keys, they buy 6 more, they run their 6 keys again. It can still save you 1 to 3 minutes per run. So we're talking 5 additional runs you don't need to do anymore, 15 to 30 minutes. That's a huge time savings. And on top of that, a lot of people don't run Iron Twins don't do it because it costs energy in addition to the keys. Yes, you lose a little bit of the I'm risking energy every time I run it, but the energy makes the rewards feel like they're not that great. You get rid of the energy requirements, and suddenly the rewards are fine because they become effectively free. Or if you're paying the 150 extra gems for the extra 6 keys, clearly those are not free, but that's somebody that's making a value judgment on how valuable those are, and you're not really sucking away resources for any other thing. So fix Iron Twins and make key content so much easier to run, please. Speaking of unrewarding content, 3v3 is probably the most unrewarding content in the game right now. And that has to do with the amount of time it takes to stay in the higher levels, to get to the higher levels, to run your keys in general. And on top of that, the bazaar just needs some help. So if I wanted to fight this fight, for example, I would probably have to manual that fight. I'd have to line the teams up properly. I'd have to make some teams, maybe swap teams out. But honestly, it is so annoying to constantly be swapping teams out in 3v3. I don't swap them too much anymore. Now you've done some help by making me allowing me to go up and down and move them around so I don't have to make sure I set them properly when I'm selecting which team I'm selecting. But it's still is a lot of time and effort to swap teams out if I want to swap teams out. It is a lot of time and effort to make 3v3 teams and have them pre-programmed ahead of time and, to make them sure that they all work together so that I can't use this team because this guy is in two different teams. There's all kinds of problems from the 3v3 as well from that end. And I understand that's kind of the point of 3v3, but it would be very, very helpful to somehow figure out a way to speed this up a little bit, maybe make the keys a little less. I don't know. The other problem that you have with this is the way these tiers are broken down and the way you've got power creep has happened. We've had mythicals enter the game, and mythicals make it a lot harder to get forward because if you don't have a PvP mythical, you're struggling to fight the PvP mythicals that do exist. And on top of that, you've got blessings. So if you're not getting all the blessings, that's some stats you're missing and some additional effects you're missing. Plus, you have ascensions for gear, and those are hurting people as well. Now, yes, we're talking about stuff that ideally all your players are actually doing, but we've already talked about why people may not be running Iron Twins. The blessings and ascensions are some of the harder dungeons in there as well. So that's why. And then it's so hard to get mythicals. There's really not too much you can do about that other than people need to spend. But we shouldn't be gatekeeping Tag Arena, at least the lower levels of Tag Arena, including Gold 1, based on spending as much as we can for some of this other stuff. Now, these player limits are low, so raising these player limits would certainly help a bit, particularly because it's part of the problem is it's just harder to get into some of these places as much, but it would actually shift the teams that are, the teams that are sitting in Silver 4 that can't get out of Silver 4 but are staying in Silver 4 because they can't. Well, maybe they're getting in Gold 1 now, so they'd be staying in Gold 1, causing less of a backup in Silver 4. I used to be able to sit in Gold 4 tag pretty easily. It became so much of a chore that I eventually dropped to Gold 3 and stayed in Gold 3. It's already dropped to the point where I'm in Gold 2, and a lot of it's because I don't have all the mythicals to deal with some of the stuff. And yes, I've ascended some of my gear. I probably do need to ascend more of my gear. So some of this is on me investing some time in it as well. But the amount of time that you need to invest to be able to deal with this, the content isn't very rewarding for it. We look here in the actual rewards. You've got your sacred shards and legendary tomes are not bad. A lot of this stuff's okay. This chicken is way overpriced. This chicken should be about half the price, if less than that. But the accessories are okay, but the fact that they can be 5-star accessories and the fact that they're almost always rare instead of epic or legendary. In fact, I don't think I've ever seen an epic or legendary come from here. Does it even say that? It does not say. That's a bit of a problem, making these accessories less exciting. They're still useful, particularly the refresh accessories are amazing, but especially now with the 9-piece sets, these accessories are less exciting, and the fact that they are low levels. This should just be 6-star. This one should be 5-star. This Void Shard should not be priced this high. This is way overpriced for a Void Shard. The chickens are definitely overpriced. Avatars are not super exciting. People don't buy them. You could also do something like you already had a champion in bronze in Drexstar. You could put another champion in silver, so maybe an existing champion too, like a Lysandra or a Morgane or somebody else that could be kind of useful in arena or has some generally good uses, but isn't going to be meta breaking anywhere. Plenty of existing champions fall into that. And then you could do it again here in the legendaries as well. It would give people something to grind for at least a while, other than just the legendary skill tome and the sacred shard, that you get one of them a month and you get one of these a month. And in order to do it, you have to grind endlessly, it feels like, in Tag Arena. So revisit Tag Arena, revisit the shop a little bit, do something about it. You could make Tag Arena a lot better than it is. Right now, it's really one of the least favorite areas in Raid for an awful lot of people. Item management could use some help. And I want to point out that Plarium has done a lot of good in the item management. So before I, suggest things that they need to fix, there's a lot of things they have done. The rank and rarity filters are great. The priority stats are great. So the fact that I can find the highest HP piece here and I can hide set filters and see what it's going to give me the most HP, that's absolutely amazing. That is super helpful in building champions. The problem is there's no way for me to see what if it doesn't have any HP. Or maybe I'm looking to build somebody with speed. I can't actually select less speed or no speed here on the priority stats. That would be one way to do it. The other option to do it would be here instead of substats where I check speed, I could then check this again and exclude speed from a substat. That would be great. Primary stats is not really needed because primary stats, either I want that primary stat to exist or I don't. But for substats, maybe I am looking to build somebody that I absolutely don't need speed on. Or maybe I'm trying to trim some gear and I want to actually see the gear that doesn't have speed because that's the gear I might be selling. Or maybe with crit rate, for example. Maybe I actually want to not build a champion with crit rate for some reason. So I need to filter out crit rate because I need to exclude pieces with crit rate. Or maybe I want to exclude pieces with resistance or accuracy because I don't need it or I actively don't want it. There's so many different options, both for building champions and for organizing and selling my gear, that the ability to negatively filter, so filter based off of not having a stat, would be an absolute boon and make filtering a lot easier. I also want to go into accessories. I do appreciate this filter here. And for those of you unaware of this, if you do the hide self filters, you can go back to the everything mixed in together like it used to be. That sometimes can actually be very helpful when you're trying to figure out what gear you need to keep and now you've got it. But it would be kind of nice to figure out ways to shrink or unshrink some of these a little bit easier. And I don't quite know how to word it, but if I shrink all the Shadowkin, then everything goes away. And otherwise, I have to shrink just this one and this one, and just this one, and just this one. And that's certainly a little more annoying. So here's something I wish Plarium would also fix about accessories. So if I shrink all of these here, in fact, we'll shrink everything here. We'll scroll down, we'll go to Sacred Order. I've got a banner right here. We roll up this Sacred Order banner. And not too bad, worth keeping. Get out of here. I'm not looking at what I was looking beforehand because it always expands this top thing back, and I really wish it would stop it. This should be something that you can fix pretty easily, Plarium. Please get to it. It would be nice. It's really annoying to have to constantly scroll back and forth. You lose your place, and it's nice to be able to roll up gear without having to select the particular faction you're looking at as the faction you're actually looking at to filter. And finally, and admittedly probably one of the lesser important things, but something I think that they could certainly do, is they could take a look at these clan quests and make them a little bit better. There's a couple different ideas I have for them, but let's take a look at the clan quests that are really problematic, because you'll notice that they're not done on my clan. Win 3 rare or epic shields from campaign. This mission absolutely sucks, because this can take one refill, this can take 20 refills, and you really don't know. And meanwhile, you're running the boss in order to run this and get this to work properly. So, because that's the only way you can get rare or epic, and it has to be a shield. So, literally, you have to get lucky enough to get a rare, and then you have to get a shield. And because normally you get common or uncommon, so you don't even get rare. So getting a rare or an epic shield, make it, instead of shield, maybe get 3 rare or epic items from campaign. That would make it easier, make it a lot easier. or maybe just make it 1. You know, it's still going to be high RNG, but 3 is so problematic that really nobody takes this quest anymore. They'd rather take a lower level quest. It just seems kind of silly. Damage with shield buffs in tag teams. So this is absorbing damage in tag team battles. That's great, but because it's wins only, generally you don't want to get hit in a tag team battle. Plus, there are so many champions that bypass shields now anyway. And generally, you're not running a lot of teams anymore because the meta just has moved away from it, where your job of survival depends on you taking damage on the shields rather than actually taking damage. There's so many ways to hit through shields. There's so many ways to just out damage shields. It really, really is a difficult one to do. And if I've tried to do it a couple times and I've never managed to get closer than 1 million, maybe 2 million in damage. And that's with running every single tag team key I could with champions in shield gear. It's just so hard to do and it doesn't make a lot of sense. It's not only anti-meta, but this number is huge. Make it 500,000, it's suddenly doable. 5 million is so hard to do because you rarely get enough from a single run to maybe even get 100,000 damage. And more likely, you're going to get 20,000 damage and taken from your shield, if that. 20,000 means I'm going to have to run this several hundred times. And that's just more tag team battles than anybody's going to run because they can't. The block revive here on the boss. This is one that's going to take somewhere between 50 to 200. At best, it's going to take 50 to get done. It is difficult, though, because you have to time everything right. You have to kill them with the right ability. You got to make sure you have the right type of champion on there. The block revive isn't always the meta anymore for a lot of these ice golem things. So this used to make a lot of sense in the classic ice golem. But there's so many ways you don't really do this block revive anymore against the ice golem. It doesn't make a lot of sense. This is going to take you at least 200 runs, most likely, just because you're going to get 1 or 0 an awful lot. Could be better. Maybe make it 10, and it might still take you 20, 30, 40 runs to get that 10. That's how rare it is to do, but at least it's possible. Doing some of these with the Ogren tribes or the Lizardmen faction, Spider's Den down here, these aren't great. It'd be nice if it was only 1 or 2 times. 10 times seems kind of rough. It's doable, especially considering it doesn't require you to do a hard stage, but you're kind of dumbing down your teams in order to do one of these quests in the first place. So maybe just making it 5. Other ways to deal with it. The summon 20 rare champions from mystery shards. People still take this quest occasionally, but usually it's when they know they're going into a summon rush and they know they're going to pull a bunch of mystery shards for it, and so they'll end up doing this anyway. And they've made it easier to feed your mystery shard champions, so that's certainly become easier in the tavern. Appreciate a lot of the tavern upgrades they have done. But this is still a very, very difficult one, and this can take... I've taken 3,000 mystery gems and barely hit this before. And I've had other runs where it only took me 500 because there's so much RNG involved with it. And I understand this is an RNG game, and that's just kind of how it plays. But it would be really nice if they would, make this a little more attainable so that it's not the pain it actually is. I mean, even if you cut it in half, it suddenly becomes a little bit less of a pain. It's still a pain, but it's at least something like maybe it's worth investing a little bit of my time. I get some other stuff done with it as well. But some of these quests, it would be nice if they made these quests, gave some more variety. Some of these quests are okay, but the big problem these quests also have is it's very easy for the people that log in the European time zone to grab the best quests. And some of these quests are super easy. Like some of these elite quests are running an Ultra Nightmare Clan Boss team 50 turns. Well, any unkillable team already does that. And we've got the Wixwell teams as well. Super easy to do. Decapitate heads on any Hydra. Well, that's an easier one to do later. That's a good one, though, at least. I like that one because that at least forces you to do Hydra, and it's attainable, but it's difficult for some people. So that one's not too bad. There's some good ones. There's some bad ones. I think they could do better. I also think that one of the ways they could certainly improve these clan quests, for example, is rather than having the clan fight over the clan quests, maybe offer 5 or 10 at each level. Players can only take 1 of each level, and everybody in the clan gets an opportunity to do their own clan quest. So I get one elite, one expert, and one basic, and I have the same 5 or 10 clan quests that everybody else in my clan has access to, and I have just as easy access to them as everyone else does. So effectively, we're all trying to progress the clan by doing something cool, but it's no longer a fight over who gets these clan quests, who's going to get the elite ones, who's going to end up taking the basic ones, who's going to get stuck with the ones that are almost undoable and end up not doing all of them. There's so many things you could improve as far as a user experience by tweaking some of these clan quests just a bit. Again, minor issue because, if you look at me, I've got a ton of these clan coins. The clan shop is generally in pretty good shape. I mean, it could be better, it could be worse, but there's useful stuff to buy in the clan shop at least. So clan coins are worth getting, but it'd be nice if they straighten these quests out a little bit more. So there are some of my thoughts on things that I think Raid could improve on. Again, not necessarily the most critical list, but I think there are a lot of things that can improve the user experience, improve the gameplay experience, and attract new players as well as keep existing players. Keep them involved, keep them doing the things they enjoy, have them do the things they don't like to do less, all kinds of great ways to improve your user satisfaction in Raid. So hopefully you've found the list interesting. Hopefully you find some of these suggestions are actually good. I would love to hear some feedback from you guys, as I asked earlier. If you get a chance, like the video if you like some of these things. Smash that subscribe button. Definitely appreciate it. I've recently opened up YouTube memberships, so if you want to help support me, you can certainly join my YouTube membership. You get access to some of the stuff in Discord. You'll get some emotes. You can use in other YouTube streams. All kinds of cool stuff. But definitely appreciate you guys for sticking around. And until the next video, I'm Bront CatHerder.